Hey guys, welcome and thank you for joining us. You're watching Open Studio right here on Cape Town TV. My name is Danny Kamboa, and yes, I've got an amazing gentleman with me in studio, goes by the name of Marc Isaacs. He is the founder of One Nation. So, in today's conversation, it's all going to be about unity and race. Okay, so Marc, firstly, welcome to the show. Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you for having me.
All right, you're welcome. So, for those that's watching us for the first time, that do not know you, seeing you for the first time, can you just give us a brief overview about yourself?
Okay, so I started an organization called My Independence, or started about 2 years ago. And the aim of the organization was to basically for each and every person to be independent in making their decisions, especially when it comes to voting. In the country currently, everything is done collectively. So if a group of or a political party says that their members should vote in a certain direction, everybody votes in that direction. What we are basically saying is that each individual has the right to vote for who they want to, whether it's a political party that they're not a member of as well. So, and then from that, we formed One Nation, which basically takes a look at the country where they are right now. So that's basically what we do. So I live in on the Cape Flats. I started the organization 2 years ago, and it basically started off with basic discussion with people in our community, and then also the disparity between the races in our country.
Yeah. So One Nation is very broadly known now to what it's become. So how long has this been coming along?
Well, One Nation is basically a sub-organization of My Independence.
Okay.
So One Nation's objective is really just to unify the country by dialogue.
Okay.
So what we've done was we've asked people to come on board to have this discussion, whether they're white, black, or colored, or even Khoisan, and to have this discussion about race because race is a major issue in our country right now.
Yeah.
We have the latest incident in Brackenfell where a group of people went on a party and some of the other races weren't invited, and that created basically violence in this community, and that is what we are trying to avoid.
Yeah. Wow. So when you speak about race and unity, when one thinks race and inequality, it's often got to do with unfair treatment. So is that one of the issues that you guys are dealing with within these communities?
Look, when you take a look at race, and if there's usually racial issues, usually inequality comes with that.
Yeah.
So what we look at is a specific type of race. Take for example a minority like the Khoisan. On a national level, government will not be really focusing the attention on such a race or tribe. And what we try to do is we bring attention and awareness to that
Yeah.
community. So when we say inequality where that is concerned, we are saying they won't get the services that is usually
Yeah.
required in the community because they're almost not seen,
Yeah.
and that is what we try to highlight.
Wow. So when you speak about those communities that are unseen, they tend to be hostile. So how do you get them to speak about the problems to you? How do you get that trust from them?
Well, it takes time. We can't just walk into a community. We have to first speak to the leaders. We first have to send them a letter.
Yeah.
You have a basic call. Once they accept you, then you're are able to come in. Other than that, it's going to be a problem. Once we obviously move past the leaders, and the leaders also speak to the community, then we are accepted to speak. And that is in most cases on the very traditional cultural type of communities
Yeah.
where that is needed. In most of the other liberal organizations or communities, it's easier to walk in because you can just say you're coming in to have a discussion,
Yeah.
and they will get people together and we'll have a talk.
So what communities are you currently working with?
Look, we're trying to target mostly the colored and black communities. We also, on a very low scale, white communities. But the most problems fall within the colored and the black communities.
Yeah.
Currently, with the farm issues that has been highlighted now, that is also taking
Yeah.
a lot of media attention. So you can see how, for example, with the Brackenfell issue, that's white on white, sorry, white on black. Then we have the farm, which is also white on black and black on white. And then in the colored communities, it basically goes both ways.
Yeah.
Um, but colored people are more susceptible and accepting to situations in the
Yeah.
country. But it can become volatile as things go along. There seems to be a polarity um, for colored people to move more to the white side. I don't understand how that works, but there's obviously got to do with the DA and how that
Yeah.
came along over the past couple of years. What basically happened in the current situation is that the DA has basically moved from national to provincial to the Western Cape only,
Okay.
and because they've lost a lot of ground.
Mhm.
And the reasons for that is because they obviously found that they are not able to survive on a national level because the black support has dropped dramatically. Um, and then we have the EFF that has grown quite substantially in Johannesburg and KwaZulu-Natal, even PE. And they're obviously focusing their attention now on the Western Cape.
Yeah.
And they're using the race card to gain support.
Mhm.
And that is where the violence is coming from.
Wow.
What we are saying is we don't want that kind of political game. We're saying that people need to work together. We need to build our country. There needs to be equality when it comes to land.
Yeah.
Um, when it comes to land expropriation, it needs to be fair. Those are the discussions that we need to speak around because those are the things that is causing the issues amongst the people.
Yeah. And when you speak about these different races, and you see that they all come with different challenges and different ways of approaching and dealing with these challenges. Like currently we're faced with with protest, which
Yes.
you mostly see it around black communities where when they want service delivery, they go out and they want service delivery. So how do you get those kind of groups, those people that believe in protesting and going the hard way, to achieve what they want, to actually bring them and say, let's have a discussion?
Well, it's sometimes difficult to do that, especially when government or provincial government is not listening to the people,
Yeah.
because it's service delivery at the end of the day. You can't almost once it reaches to a point where people have to protest, then it's too late already.
Yeah.
So you need to engage that people before it gets to that point, and then see also how the community can assist government, because whatever is happening in the country, you must understand. And my point is always, we a lot of people say that the ANC has been 25 to 28 years in power, but it's not easy to govern a country
Within 28
within
to 25.
25 to 28
All right,
with
Mark.
all the issues that came from the
Yeah.
past.
All right, we're going to take a short break. Okay. I like where this conversation is going, and I want us to come back speaking about this one in particular. Okay. So,
Okay.
for those that's watching at home, guys, I urge you to not go anywhere. We'll be back after this. All right, guys, welcome back. You're watching Open Studio right here on Cape Town TV. I'm Danny Cambo, and joining me in studio is Mr. Marc Isaacs, who is the founder of One Nation. So we spoke a little bit about his background, about what the organization is doing for our communities, and also bringing about unity within our country. And just to continue with our conversation, for those that missed it, we are currently speaking about unity with and fairness, treating people fairly. And now, just before we took a break, we spoke about how different races, approach different situations. And looking at the black race with current situations, they tend to go more for protesting, and having the voices heard in order for them to receive service delivery. So just give us an insight as to how you guys approach these situations.
Okay, so firstly, in each community or ward, you find a counselor. So whenever there's an issue in a community, then the community should be able to approach the counselor. The counselor then takes that information and then sends it to their leaders or their bosses and things so that it can be addressed. If that is not done, then people will come back and they become unhappy. If it's still ignored, people then decide to protest. That is when you find people burning tires in the street, burning buildings, breaking down schools. It's because they are not heard. So what we are trying to do is when we go into a community is to discuss those issues and then put the pressure on the ward councillor. The ward councillor then needs to give us the answers as to what has taken place, when it's going to be sorted out, and when the community can get those results. Then we also engage the community leaders, and then also the political party ward councillor that is in those areas, so that we can bring the level of protest down. Because the more protests there are, the more unstable the country looks. It's not good for the economy because it pushes away investors. People can't go to work because it's unrest. Infrastructure as a whole is destroyed. For example, tires burning in the road is destroyed, it must be repaired. One of the other incidents that took place a couple of months ago was that the protesters burned the traffic lights. So then it stops movement. And then, obviously, with the Constitution, every person has the basic right to movement. You can't move. Do you understand? So that is the way of people protesting. So that is what we are saying is before a situation becomes an issue, address it. And if the council can't address it, they need to say, look, I can't address it. We need help. And that is why we are there.
Wow. So looking at our government right now, at the current situation, do you think, since we became a democratic country, do you think from then up until this time right now, is it enough time for a government or any political party to govern a country and give it what it needs to move forward?
No, I don't think so. I think a lot of people is being unfair with the fact that they say that the ANC should have or could have managed the country very well for 25 years. You can't really, because you have to take a look at the amount of apartheid years. Our people have been damaged in the sense of the way they think, their worldview, how they've been able to develop themselves in education and then in skill and then become professionals. We're talking about 3 generations. So how can you expect in a half a generation that 3 generations damage must be corrected? It's impossible. So that needs to be corrected first. When we talk about the millennials, they've got a view and an understanding of how South Africa is. So they want to be part of something we know when there's a struggle. So what they're seeing now is a struggle because there's inequality. The white people can't see where the equality is coming from because to them they just gave up the country and they're trying to work for something, but they've got 45 years, 46 years of development of skill, which the black and colored people don't have. And that is what our discussion is going to be about.
So do you
That
think,
needs to be corrected.
do you think in this process since 1994 up until now, has the government made enough effort to try and communicate with the nation and tell them this is where we are at, this is where we are going, this is the reason why things are slow, and so forth?
I think with the reconstruction and development plan, that was what they were looking at. But then also what took place during that period was the corruption issues. And all the focus then started moving towards corruption and then the infighting between political parties. And look, when people see things are not stable, they become worried. When people, there's a sense of complacency that takes place. So as much as they wanted to do so many things, the corruption, and look, corruption is part of any transition in a country. You can't shy away from it. You don't want it, but you can't shy away from it. How you tackle it from the start is how it's going to progress later into the years. So had the ANC maybe started early when corruption started and dealt with the people then, the situation would have been much better today. That's maybe the only thing they can put on the ANC really.
Wow. So coming back, to your organization, and I love what you guys are doing, and the way you're bringing the message across, because you are you are aware of what is happening, and you know exactly how to tackle the problem. So when we speak about the blacks specifically, because in my opinion, I feel like they're the ones on the worst side, of service delivery, of poverty, and so forth. And I do not want to cause any, misunderstanding, but as based on what we are seeing. So in those communities, how has the experience been for you going into that communities and speaking to people that are not receiving what they are looking for and they are not being heard by the government?
Look, it's difficult. Look, when you walk into a community, well, in the black community, we obviously can't just walk in. You obviously know that we need to, obviously, with the community leaders, we need to discuss with them first before we go into a community. So they will tell us what the situations are. In some, take for example, a place like Kalecha, it's basically spread amongst 3 or 4 different political parties. If there was one political party, it would be easy to say, okay, you're responsible for that. But now we have 3 or 4 different parties that are in that community, so we have to go to each one of them and say, look at what is happening. What I would have done is, for example, if we take, for example, the 500 billion that the government received to use for COVID-19. If we take that situation, um, 500 billion could basically, you could build a new city. I would have started there and did something like that in Kalicha later, section by section. Um, COVID-19 really brought upon the realities of what we are facing now, the differences between situations in different communities, how government basically addressed those type of things. Um, in different areas, they said the service delivery was much better. In other areas,
All right, Mark. So we're going to take another short break. So when we come back, then we get more into conversation about the pandemic and how, in your opinion, could have worked differently, to try and help everyone. So for those that's watching at home, I urge you, do not go anywhere. Stay tuned. We'll be back right after this. All right, guys, welcome back. You're watching Open Studio right here on Cape Town TV. If you've just tuned in, you're not too late. You're still in time to learn something new, because joining me in studio is an amazing man who goes by the name of Marc Isaacs. All right, so he's here to speak to us a little bit more about his organization, which is called One Nation, and the amazing work they're doing within communities to help and bring about unity in all races. All right, Marc. So once again, welcome to the show for those that's just tuned in. So to continue with our conversation, we covered a lot of grounds about service delivery, inequality, unfair treatment within different races, and also the different challenges. So just to narrow it down to one of the major issues that we had this year, which is the coronavirus, the pandemic, and there's been lots of money that was given to the country in attempt to help and rebuild where it's been broken, and fix where there's been damage. Do you think, as a country, that money was handled correctly, and what could have been done differently to try and bring about balance to the country?
well, it's clear that the money wasn't used correctly. 500 billion is gone. If you take a look at the amount of things that has been done with the money, there was supposed to be a vaccine that was supposed to be developed, or research towards a vaccine that should have been developed here in the country. The money could have been used to build more hospitals, not just makeshift hospitals in schools and in the civic center or so. They could have genuinely just built hospitals. Um, if you take a look at the amount of ambulances that we have, they could have genuinely bought some good ambulances for communities that don't have. So now, I don't think it has been used correctly. We obviously know that a lot of the funds has gone, um, and people have obviously filled their pockets with that money. And if you take a look at the amount of development, it doesn't even look at 25% in some communities.
Wow. And like you mentioned now, especially with the hospitals and the ambulance, as a functioning person, that's the first thing you want to think about, and you want to build or fix, because we are in a pandemic, and that is vital that you have medical facilities, you have enough space to accommodate a large sum of people. So you that have been working within communities and these informal settlements, where the people are really struggling, how is the medical assistance in those areas?
Look, I think the government in the beginning handled the situation very well. With the early lockdown, they managed to get a number of things in place. So from the offset, they did very well. Now there was a hospital that was built in a civic center where they put in some beds, the oxygen machines and those type of things. So those things went very well in the beginning. I think where the biggest problem came in was when it had to do with the UIF and the money that was supposed to be given to the public. That money never reached the public in time. It's only now that it's running smoothly. If you talk about the UIF fund that had to go to employees to via the owners of the businesses, that never worked well either, because the amount of time that it took to get to the workers basically caused much hardship. And then we had the permit system, obviously, with regards to the handing out of food. That was dismal because the food never got to the communities. Only a certain amount of people received the food. Then we had people working in communities, community workers, maybe not registered community workers, but community workers that were handing out food to the public. If that wasn't there, this government would have been in a very serious situation. because the public there then decided to take on the responsibility of government, and they started feeding the people. I mean, I was one of those people that gave out in our community, and then we also assisted other communities by giving them food to assist the communities. So government failed there completely, and I think that would have if it had to come to if the election had to be this year, they would have lost dismally. They've got a year now to correct before the next election, and I'm hoping that they will be able to do so.
Because I mean, the pandemic is not over yet. We are still well within the COVID-19, and it's the decisions they make right now will actually either give them a boost into the election or really drop them drastically. And when we speak about these people living in the informal settlement that's receiving the bare minimum, they are mostly looked at as they do not have a voice because they are not being heard. How do you give a voice to the voiceless?
Well, like I said, we have to go into those communities, and it takes people, organizations that are even in those communities. You don't need to protest really, but if it gets to that, that means people are not being heard. That is the only way they're going to get the attention of government. So, to avert that situation, you need to go into the communities. You need to speak to the people. Community leaders sometimes, have to take a lot of information from everybody, complaints and those things, and then they have to go to the councillor, lodge the complaints with the council. The council then have to go to his authorities and take it from there.
And that can
But
take time.
the red tape to get one thing done takes forever.
Yeah.
Whereas if you speak to the communities way before a situation occurs, then it's easier to handle because then we've got time to play with.
Yes.
But if you don't have time, that means you have to react now, and then immediately that affects the budget for that specific community.
Wow.
Because now you have to put in extra money to avert the situation.
Yeah. Wow. So tell us about One Nation as we're going towards the end of the show. How do we get a hold of you? What do we expect when we see One Nation?
Okay, so what we'll do is we will, if you come into a community, you will see posters in the community. Yeah. But before that happens, obviously we'll engage with the community leaders and the councils of that community. Yeah. So over the next couple of months, leading up just before the election, we will be having community discussions. So what will happen in the community is we will then speak to the community leaders. They will then bolster the support amongst the community. We will then select a wall or a center or a church or a mosque where we will go in and we will have this discussion. Once the discussion has been taken place, we will record all the information from the community, and then once all the information is gathered from all the communities, we will then call a leaders summit.
Yeah.
The leaders summit is in all the leaders of all political parties, political organizations, civic organizations, community-based organizations, where the issues will then be brought out and discussed and solutions sought for. Once solutions are sought, we will then make up a memorandum, and we will select the leader of that group then to take it to government and hand it to the president.
Oh wow! So it is a structured process, from start to finish. All right, Mark. So thank you so much for joining us in studio today and bringing this light, and really putting One Nation in the map. And thank you for the good work that you're doing. And I'm sure the people that you've been working with can really appreciate it. And I see that we need people like you. We need organizations like you to really uplift our communities, and bring us out of this predicament that we're in right now. So from my side, thank you very much. And I'm sure South Africa thanks you guys. For those that's watching at home, thank you so much for tuning in today. Thank you for being part of today's show. My apologies. And once again, Mark, thank you so much for coming to the show, guys. Until next time, from my side and the Cape Town TV crew, bye-bye.